Theresa May's Brexit deal has suffered another huge blow. British Parliament rejected her plan for the second time. And this comes over 2 weeks before the deadline to leave the EU. CBS News foreign correspondent Mark Phillips joins us now from outside Parliament in London. So, Mark, was this a surprise? And why did so many members of Parliament vote against May's deal today?
The answer is it wasn't a surprise at all. The margin in the vote was 149 against the May deal. It's a little bit less of a margin than the last time she put her deal to Parliament when it was over 200, but it is still a massive defeat for a sitting Prime Minister whose sole policy has been to try to get, and sole job has been to try to get a Brexit organized for Britain to leave the European Union. She had gone back to the EU to try to get a deal that would satisfy people on the Europhobe, the Eurosceptic end of her party, her Conservative Party. It turned out not to be enough. A good chunk of her party voted against her own deal. Virtually all of the opposition, with a few exceptions, voted against it, and the deal has gone down. Now, where that leaves the whole Brexit question, with, just as you say, a couple of weeks essentially to go, is the short answer is that nobody really knows. There'll be another couple of votes here over the next couple of days, one in which Parliament will, it's thought, to indicate that it does not want to, what they call, crash out of the European Union without any kind of a deal, which would create all measure of economic calamity. There are no trade deals worked out at this stage. There are all kinds of other problems. And then following that, likely suggestion from Parliament that no deal will be accepted. There'll be another vote on Thursday at which the British Parliament will authorize the government to seek an extension of the deadline from the EU. Right now, the exit date is March 29th. It'll be then up to the European Union, which has to unanimously vote amongst all of its members whether or not to grant that extension, and that's not a sure thing either.
Mark, at any point do you think that there could potentially be a whole entire new vote for the entire country, that the people can go back and revote?
Well, the shorter answer is it's not likely at this stage. There is a movement to go back to the people based on several ideas, one of which being that the original vote to leave the EU wasn't based on all of the facts which have emerged since that vote in 2016. But there is not a majority in either party, and not a majority in the House of Commons to seek a second vote. There are all kinds of issues in addition to whether it's a good or bad idea to leave the EU. There are all kinds of other issues having to do with the basics of democracy. The country did vote 52 to 48% to leave. Now Parliament finds itself in a position where it may potentially have to go back to say, well, think again. And that's not anything that any politician, although it is the policy, not the very strongly held policy of the opposition party, the Labour policy, to seek a second referendum if all else fails. At this point, although all else is failing, it hasn't been a complete process yet.
Mark, you mentioned how Theresa May is really the face of Brexit. What does this defeat mean for her and her prime ministership?
Well, she's a prime minister, as they say, in office, but not in power. She couldn't bring her own party along to support her deal. The right wing of her party, as I say, the Eurosceptic wing of her party rejects it. A lot of them think the best thing that could happen is that the UK crash out on March 29th, which is to say just leave the EU without any economic arrangements, in effect, as how trade will continue and relationships will continue after that. She has vowed to carry on at this point. There's been a lot of speculation as to whether she can, and if so, for how long. Nobody's taking long-term bets on her survival, but for the time being, she continues.
Mark Phillips, outside Parliament in London. Mark, thank you very much.